found their strategic plan online, and it's a beautiful, well put together, well designed plan. However, what I realized very quickly is that the plan is so vast and so enormous and so heavy that I'm looking at how do we experience successful outcomes and where is our focus really going to be? So one of the first things that I had a conversation with my board about was we need to rethink our strategic plan. And it's, I don't want to diminish the hard work and effort and collaboration that went into this plan, because there are really great things in the plan that we don't need to get rid of. However, we need to bring it from way out here and bring it to right here.
So welcome everyone. My name is Avinash Bansal. I'm the co-founder of TomoClub. And today in our Leaders for Tomorrow podcast, we have the Superintendent of Pojoaque Valley School District from New Mexico, Dr. Channell Segura. Thank you so much for coming in today, Dr. Channell.
Thank you, Avinash. It's great to be here.
So today's topic is very interesting. I was just talking to you about how the school leadership is undergoing insane challenges in the last 5 years, from COVID to Department of Education being shut down at the federal level to AI and other teacher retention issues. I think for any school leader to keep up with a strategic plan is all-time difficult right now. And I think discussing that, how a focused plan can lead to success, is something a lot of school leaders are looking for when talking to other school leaders. So we're definitely going to deep dive. But before, I would love to introduce you to my audience, that you are you have had several hats over the last so many years, from teachers to principal to district administrator to state leader and to superintendent at multiple districts. You were also working in the New Mexico Public Department of Education, and you are well known for your equity-driven leadership, your deep commitment to cultural responsive practices, and strong partnership with communities. And you have spent so much time in New Mexico. I think I am very curious to understand your deep insights about the state, culture, and overall parents' expectations from schools. So it's gonna be fun, and we are honored to have you here with us today. So first thing that I always ask my guest is, what got you into education in the first place, and is that reason still valid after so many years?
Yes. So thank you for the question. Education has always been a very important aspect of my life. And, it goes back to my first grade teacher. I always give her a lot of credit, Miss Maria Romero, and she taught me how to read. And that was learning how to read just opened up so many doors for me to feel successful as a student. And so, I loved everything about school. I was that student who was very compliant, engaged. I did everything that my teachers would ask me to do. And, I loved the smells, I loved the sounds, and I loved watching my teachers write on the chalkboard. Yes, they had chalkboards back then. And it was just where I felt positive and successful, and I just loved it. I looked at it as a pathway for me where I fit, and I continued with my education, and it wasn't until I got to college that I didn't feel as successful as I did in my K-12 education, and that's where I realized that I didn't have really the necessary constructs in place in my K-12 setting to ensure that I would have the skills and capacity to be successful in college. So my first semester of college was a real challenge. I almost lost my scholarship, and it wasn't for a lack of trying. I just didn't have certain skills that I realized were necessary, time management. I was always very organized as a student, so that wasn't a problem. But just the critical thinking and writing, math, all of those pieces that you need to be successful in that setting. And so, my journey has always been education. My life has always been education, because I truly believe that it is the great equalizer in our country. And, moving from being a student to a teacher, I felt it was my obligation to make sure that the challenges that I had wouldn't be replicated with my students.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's stemming a lot from your personal story. And I think that has been one of the most common things because like intrinsic motivation is something that's the most important factor to grow in any industry. And thank you so much for your service. But is that reason still valid after so many years?
It is. It is very valid. And, education is a human experience. And sometimes we forget about that. And we are so laser focused on all the things that we have to do, all the achievement, rates that have to improve. And we forget about the people and the humanity behind the work. And so, relationships are pivotal. Um, and I think to myself, sometimes I think we get stuck in the relationship piece and we
Mhm.
don't push beyond that into the, relevance and the rigor. And our students they're ready. They are ready to learn. They're, hungry for it. And I
Mhm.
think that they have been provided conditions based off of things that are not in their control. Our teachers and staff and families, when COVID hit, that was something unlike anything that we've ever experienced in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And the word pivot was used a lot during that time. So I don't really like that word anymore, because we had to pivot a lot.
Mhm.
And I think, looking back on that time, how do we get out of we're here to provide any and everything to help you succeed, because we can't do it all. And I think as educators and as the public school system, we try to do it all for everyone. And that's where we get overwhelmed, overburdened, feelings of, we can't succeed, when all of these priorities from everyone are pulling at us.
Mhm.
And that's where I feel, having a strong strategic plan and the people rallying around that plan is extremely important if we want to see the gains in our students' outcomes that we're looking for.
No, absolutely. I think I can't agree with you more because the parent expectation itself is evolving so quickly, and the the ease of communication has become a challenge in a way because now everyone has opinions and they can share this opinion publicly and they can speak it even louder by amplifying it in multiple ways. So yeah, there's so much noise around you that how do you keep yourself still focused has become a challenge more than ever. Uh, but first, I would love to know, because I always ask, can you give us more information about the New Mexico parents? Like, what are their cultural expectations from schools? What are their academic or sports? Like, give us a brief about that.
Yes. So New Mexico, I say, has such a rich tapestry of culture and family and care. Um, our landscape is beautiful, our people are beautiful, and our families want the best for their kids, just like any other family in the world.
Yeah.
Having kids, they are something that you create and you take that very personally. And so when we look at the families within New Mexico, there's great struggle, and we recognize that there's a lot of generational poverty that the school system and the state try to mitigate through different supports, grants, opportunities, so that our families can lift up out of some of these challenges that they face. And again, when what I look at is how can our public school system be that place where our students come, they are provided multiple opportunities to feel successful and to find their sense of purpose. And I think that is a huge piece where how do we reset that mindset toward education where, it's kind of a one size fits all. We fit into these different constructs that have been in place for years and think outside of the box and looking at, what's good for one student or group of students may not be the best for others. And so we have to be malleable in how we approach education. When, coming out of COVID and that, whole environment, it really opened my eyes into what was possible and that we don't have to do what we've always done. And how can we think differently about education and how our students learn and how, our families have needs,
Mm-hmm.
how to support our families, but not enable them to continue on that same trajectory. How do we create those situations where they find opportunities as well,
Mm-hmm.
and where we can be partners with them to help support their students at home
Yeah.
as an extension of their learning.
No, absolutely. In fact, I agree. I was checking out the pictures of Pojoaque, and I love the valley. The
Yes,
um, the the terrain that you guys have is absolutely brilliant,
it's
and
majestic.
and the school district is not small. Like it has 2,000 plus students. So when you joined almost 6 months back now, um, but like walk us through, because for anyone to create a strategic plan, they have to do an assessment to understand and gauge where the current situation is. So walk us through, because a lot of schools are facing different problems, from teacher retention to enrollment decline to infrastructure issues. So what was your assessments before joining, or was it like previous superintendent gave you some notes or focus areas, and then how did you come up with the action plan?
When I first decided to apply for this position, I did, do my research and I looked at, the district's website. I spoke to many individuals and I found their strategic plan online. And it's a beautiful, well put together, well designed plan. However, what I realized very quickly is that the plan is so vast
Hmm.
and so enormous and so heavy that I'm looking at how do we experience successful outcomes and where is our focus really going to be?
Hmm.
So, one of the first things that I had a conversation with my board about was we need to rethink our strategic plan. And it's, I don't want to diminish the hard work and effort and collaboration that went into this plan because there are really great things in the plan
Yeah.
that we don't need to get rid of. However, we need to bring it from like way out here and bring it to right here.
Yeah.
So they agreed to work with me, and we're partnering with a consulting company who, came in and said, okay, they assessed our strategic plan. There's 102 strategic priorities in the plan, and that is a lot.
Is that a
So
decade
they said,
plan?
so, my goal is to get it to like 16 because no one can do 102 things well and
Yeah.
see the outcomes that we really want and that our kids deserve.
Hmm.
So we did a lot. So this consulting firm came in and they did impact and feasibility protocols with our school board as well as with my executive leadership team to really identify, like, is this something, looking at all our strategic priorities, what kind of impact can we have? And is it feasible within the time that we have? The people, time, money, resources to get this done by 2027, which is when this strategic plan supposedly expires. And so we did that, and they're working with us to really hone in on, this is what we heard, these are the things that the people involved in the work that are closest to students are saying we need to focus on. And that is really important to me. So when they came and did the protocol with my team and the board, I said, I need to do this work with each of my school staff.
Right.
And so I did that. And it was really important for me to be there leading the work with the staff so that they could see that I'm invested in this work and that we are going to focus on this work
Yeah.
together. Because a lot of times strategic plans are developed, you get people who are willing, and they put something beautiful together, but then it maybe sits on a website,
Yeah.
um, gets talked about in larger settings, referred to maybe once in a while. But
Yeah.
I asked my staff in each of the meetings, I said, how many of you have read the strategic plan? And I said, be honest. And maybe one hand got raised. And I said, what are our 4 goals? And they didn't know.
Mm.
And that therein lies the problem. When I look at a strategic plan, that is the roadmap that we all need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And all of our school, 90-day plans and every teacher's professional development plan should be aligned from that strategic plan so that all of our work is going in the same direction.
Mm.
Um, and so that was really the thing that made me say, I can't do my work
Mm.
effectively until we really identify what are the main things that are important, that align with the values of our community, and that are going to really push our students and enable them to succeed. And let's look at, it was this strategic plan is very adult action oriented. So a lot of like to-dos,
Mm-hmm.
but no real tracking of, is this, once we complete this, how do we know it was effective?
Yeah.
And so we're still in the midst of refining the strategic plan, but we're really excited to be able to have this roadmap that, I am going to lead the work. I am going to talk about the work in every space that I'm in,
Mm.
um, and that our principals will utilize that, and our teachers. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
But that was a huge piece for me taking on this role, was we need to quickly
Mm-hmm.
re-examine our strategic plan and the purpose and how we want to use it.
Now, I have so many questions on that. But first thing, I want to know, what are those 4 goals that you guys finally boiled down to? Four or
So
six.
we're working on them still. Our original goals, the first one was student achievement, and that was so broad. It was student achievement in reading, mathematics, and science and social studies. So it's like, okay, yes, we want to do it all, and we want to do it all great, but we've got to hone in on the really, really important. Our second goal was a strong workforce. So recruitment, retention, building up our staff, providing training, all of that, which is really important. The third goal is student health and wellness, which is extremely important at this day and age because our students have been exposed to so many different situations and circumstances. um, you know, the use of social media, screen time, all of that, they need that reflection time as well. They need that quiet time. So the student health and wellness is really important. And then the last one was modernization.
Mm.
So how do we modernize our systems within the district, again, to create the conditions down to the classroom that makes our teachers' lives easier? And so those were the 4. As we did the protocol throughout the district, I also did a student survey to get their input on what's important to them.
Mhm.
And then I did a staff and family and community survey regarding the same questions of what's important to them and what they value. And what was interesting is that the focus areas that rose to the top was they want to do better. Students want to do better in reading and math. They want to have engaging lessons. They want, to be pushed and to be held to high expectations. And our families said the same thing. They want their kids to be able to read and do math. So those were similar.
Mm.
The second piece was student health and wellness. They want to have those supports. They want to have counselors and social workers and all of those pieces that we know are important to the human condition.
Right.
And those also rose to the top for both groups. And then the third piece was college and career readiness and preparation for life after school. And all of those, groups identified those three things as the things. So as we're looking at our new goals, what I'm thinking is that we're going to have a reading goal, we're going to have a math goal, a student health and wellness goal, and a college and career readiness goal.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you. Any plan without a metric to track its ground reality will be nothing but hope. And
Yes.
I think it will be good to have, not something that people can, always wake up in the morning and think in that direction. So
Right.
I think on the organizational level, such plans really matter, and they're not just a piece of paper or a PDF on the website. Um, so lovely. Thanks for that. But at the same time, whenever a new leadership comes in a school or in any organization, for the matter of fact, they are looked upon with doubts. They're looked upon with somebody who's gonna create havoc and wreck everything up. Uh, and it becomes a challenge, right? Because so a lot of leaders that I talk to, whenever they come to a new school, they won't start bringing in change before 2 years, right? Because they want to build the trust, develop that confidence among each other, and then unleash their plans in a way, right? So
Yes.
tell me about how's your take on that? Because coming up with such a massive, I will not use the word pivot, but massive change can be overwhelming to the new people, and they might not still know you as an individual, and they might not trust you with all their hearts. So how do you
Yes.
figure that out?
Yes. So again, going back to that human aspect of education, I'm a very relational person, and so I have really tried to be visible, to be in the schools, to interact with our staff and with our students, and just trying to be as present and with them as possible so that they can see who I am, get glimpses of who I am. Um, they know that they're able to, reach out to me if they have questions or concerns. And again, the strategic plan should be the thing that the board and the superintendent and the school community are rallying behind,
Yeah.
because that's what we're identifying as the goals for this community and for our students. And so, our student data, state data, just came out. We've had, some really bright spots in certain grade levels, but as a whole, we didn't move, as much in the right direction that we should be moving. And so I think using data to help that narrative, creating the space and having the conversations with staff to say, like, there is no silver bullet.
Hmm.
We are the silver bullet. We're the ones closest to the students that are going to improve their outcomes. And if we do it together strategically, anything can happen. But what I've seen is that this district has gone through a lot of turnover and change at the upper leadership level.
Hmm.
And what that does is it creates a culture of instability
Yeah.
and a culture of isolation. So teachers working in isolation, schools working in isolation. And when I look at a district like this, there is no need for us to be working in isolation.
Hmm.
And the fact that we've seen what can happen. Some of these grade levels, we saw double digit growth in reading and math. And so I'm like, it's possible. We
Hmm.
can do it, but it shouldn't be isolated to certain grade levels. This
Yeah.
should be every grade level, and we can do that. So I think, being a superintendent is you're managing a lot of the whirlwind that is going on a day-to-day basis, but you have to take that step back and refocus everyone to not get consumed by that whirlwind and be a strategic leader that again is going to refocus everybody on what we said is important, to take a breath and to say it's okay. We can struggle productively. We can have thoughtful risk taking, in our lessons and how we do things. And I welcome, I've been very vocal about welcoming them to tell us what's working with your students in your classroom. And if it's working, let's share that. Because again, it's the people here that are going to make the difference for our kids. It's not a company coming in. It's not, even me as the superintendent. I'm not going to make all the difference in this district. I'm going to be the best supporter, the best focuser for them, and encourage them and hold them to high expectations and develop a culture of that reciprocal accountability so that they know I'm not just holding them accountable, but they are holding me accountable too. And I'm okay with that. And, I've told my team, we are here to support our schools and we exist for them. We need to support them. If we're going to hold them to high expectations and have them meeting these expectations, we need to make sure that we've provided the proper training, the proper resources and tools, and the ongoing supports for them to do those things that we're asking them to do. And so that is my thing. I'm about like, all right, we're in this arm in arm. And I hate the word roll up your sleeves, but we're arm in arm in this work together. I am not afraid to do anything that I'm asking, any of my staff to do. And again, like the answer is here.
No, absolutely. Well put. And it's honestly, I felt motivated like your staff. So I have no doubts that this is definitely gonna percolate very well. But a lot of times with actionable plans at the macro level, and it's very difficult to translate them to a micro level. So, for example, if I'm a math teacher of, let's say, grade six, I have a classroom, I have some resources, I have my plan of action that I come in. But if I have to change something and I have to achieve something different, then somebody has to sit with me or work with me to help me make some of those changes and nuances on a daily basis. Like, and or I should be given a target and I should be given some time where I'm introspecting and making my own plans and submitting my plans. So it has to be either two ways. At the grassroots level, either you sit with them, work together, or you give them goals and ask them to submit a plan and then work on it.
Yes.
And that needs time for somebody to think beyond their daily tasks. And we all, whether at the highest level or at the grassroots level, everyone is so stuck up in their business as usual days that it's very hard to detach yourself. So how do you do that, or what's your plan with that?
So when I look at, where I am as the superintendent, I'm thinking about what do our master schedules look like? Because as you said, time is what is missing. We don't have enough time for our teachers to collaborate, for our leaders to collaborate and learn and problem solve with each other. So as we're looking into next year, we're looking at our master schedules. How do we maximize time for the instructional time? But then also, how do we identify time for ongoing professional learning throughout the school day? That's regular. And that's, again, focused on the goals that we have in place so that we're not losing track of why we're sitting and meeting during that time. What has been the experience here that I've heard remnants of is that, teachers will get together, but it's not focused. It's, oh my gosh, this class period. And, it's a lot of, um, just kind of contemplating what is going on in their classrooms and problems. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that. And we need that time as educators because we're dealing with a lot of little humans on a daily basis who come with different challenges and expectations and behaviors. Um, and so, it's finding that balance of here's this time we're providing. This
Mm.
time is
Okay.
meant for our strategic work together. And again, allowing teachers to be thoughtful risk takers,
Mm.
allowing teachers to ask questions or to say, this is really uncomfortable for me. I'm not used to this. Like, I have always taught this curriculum my entire life. And, they'll pull out that binder that has all their lesson plans, everything set. And now you're asking me to do something different. Like, I'm about to retire. I don't want to change it up.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay to have those conversations, but then always to go back to the data. Because if we're not seeing improvement in what we're doing, then our students aren't just the ones that are not successful. It's our staff that don't feel successful. And that's where they get wrapped up in the monotony and the drudge of this is hard and this is heavy. And being an educator that in this day and age is not the same as it was, and it's not. And so I think acknowledging those pieces, having those conversations and saying, okay, you know, um, Dr. Segura, you have all these lessons and you've used this curriculum, but these are the areas where your students are not showing growth. So what can I do to support you to maybe utilize, different strategies or different resources for these areas? And let's track that over time. So just baby steps. However, you talked about coming in as a new leader and creating all this change and creating resentment. Um, there's a healthy balance of coming in and being present, being clear about your intention, being clear that you are there to support the people, making quick changes that need to be made in order for the system to work effectively and efficiently. But then, going back to we have a sense of urgency right now. We
Yeah.
can't wait until next year. We can't wait until 2 years from now to see if this works. We've got to progress monitor, in chunks, small chunks to see if something's working or not, because kids are sitting in our seats right now. And I don't want to say, well, we'll see whenever you're, a seventh grader, if it worked or not, if you're struggling in math still.
Mm.
We want to know right away so that we can provide those supports.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It's challenging work. And when, you have conversations with educators and they're just overwhelmed. And when you get down to the nitty gritty of what is overwhelming, it usually is constant interruptions
Yeah.
in the instructional day or instructional week. These mandates or expectations that are expected without supports, without conversations, and without clear intentionality. I feel like whenever you're clear with what you're doing and why we're doing it, it goes off a lot better
Mm.
than coming in and saying, you know, this is what it is. We've got to do better. We're not doing, we're not working hard enough, because
Mm.
that would create resentment for me. Someone new coming into my community and telling me we're not doing good enough.
Mm.
Like, we're working really hard, but are we working in the right space? Are we working with the right momentum, um, and with the right collective energy to do the work well? And
Mm.
so it's making people realize, like, again, there is no silver bullet. We are the silver bullet. And when we work together collectively, anything can happen. Anything we set our minds and hearts to.
No, I love it. In fact, if you have that dedicated time slot with coming out of the professional development time or something else, I think that's a good start, because when you will sit in a meeting with an agenda and there's nothing else that's going to be bothering you at that time, at least, I think then you will start to think. You will, I think time was the most important commodity there. And if we can, and if any school is carving that out, the planning and the execution will definitely come in. So there is
Yes.
no doubt about that. But
Yes.
the most important question that school leader asked me, that even if we have a strategic plan, which is coming out of, like you did, all the survey of the stakeholders from teachers, parents, community, and previous leaders, and then coming up with a plan. But things are happening very randomly in a school. And how do you accommodate those kind of contingencies in the plan itself, that people can still keep up with the pre-planned thing and not just get swayed away with something else, because new things will always happen.
Yes. So, going back to 102 strategic priorities
Hmm.
and really paring it down to no more than like 16, I think is the focus, and that is the work, and to keep wrapping around those pieces. Again, I believe that we're being hit with random, things that we either have to laugh or cry about. And so, it's problem solving, but and the job is overwhelming
Hmm.
because you have so many constituents. And, I spoke about this previously, with my husband, is that, I've really struggled to find balance in my life between my personal and professional life.
Hmm.
And, our kids are now in college, and taking that time to really reflect on on the things that maybe I should have focused more on what was going on, at home, and spending more time. I mean, I douse my kids with love, and they know I adore them. But you do feel guilty as an educator, and the more you progress in the education system, you get pulled further and further away. And so, looking at staff, and as they are being pulled in different directions and different life circumstances on their own, I always, have told my staff, family comes first, and your health comes first. And it's okay to be honest about that. And if something is getting in the way, or if we're doing something that we're not even aware of, or we're asking you to do something that you feel is not plausible, then let's have that conversation, instead of feeling resentful and frustrated. Let's talk it out, and let's adjust where we need to make adjustments so that you can feel successful. But
Hmm.
again, it goes back to, I feel like our students need that sense of purpose. As educators, we have chosen to be in this situation. Our students have not necessarily chosen to be like, you know, I choose to go to school every day. They're not the student that Channell was. Um, some are and some aren't. And so my goal is to really make sure that our students are finding their sense of purpose, so they're not just coming to come to school because they have to come to school. But it's also for our teachers and our staff. I want them to have a sense of purpose when they come to school, and to look forward to it, and to not be like, oh, I have to go back to work on Monday. That it's like,
Yeah.
I have to work. We're starting this new unit. We're doing this new project. My kids are really going to be excited about it. So looking at those different opportunities that get them excited, to where all the other noise is just that, and it can just be that,
Hmm.
um, having those expectations in place.
No, I think those are very valid points, which any school leader who will be listening to this will definitely align. And it's definitely easier said than done. And keeping that in mind every time a new problem will arise, even if you have those 16 pointers, at 17 or 18 or a 19 pointer will come. And how do you deal with them? How do you strike them off, or put your foot down and say that, hey, that's not what we decided to work on, even if it
Yeah.
feels most urgent, but that's not what. So saying no is also so important, because I think teachers do not say no. I think very rarely they say no, because
I agree.
so I
I
think
agree.
it's hard. Now I just want to focus on last two topics of your four actionable plan. First of all, the the modernization that you talked about. So AI is definitely there, and no podcast can be without talking about AI right now. So how are you guys planning that? How is your school district goal or action plan around AI is right now?
So, we have not spent the time that we've needed to spend on AI the way that it deserves to be focused on right now because it is constant, and it's impacting every aspect of this world. And so, what we have done, I'm sending three of my cabinet members to be a part of this AI convening that where they're going to meet with other professionals across the country, share problem solving strategies, policy to get a better understanding of how we're positioned and how we can improve and tighten up on those policies. I'm one to believe in that any challenge that comes our way is an opportunity. So
Hmm.
when I look at AI, I look at AI as an opportunity in modernization to help with efficiency, um, in communications at the basic level. But there's so many things that it can do and that it's doing whether we like it or not. And that's a scary thing. And for a lot of educators, AI is scary. And instead of banning it and saying you can't use it, how do we use it? How do we create, we have policy in our district around AI,
Hmm.
but it feels very just compliance based versus how are we truly utilizing AI to advance our systems. That's a big piece for me with our cabinet is not just the instructional aspect and how it can be utilized in the classroom, but also for our systems. How are we utilizing it for budget and finance? How are we utilizing it for HR? I look and as I'm scrolling on LinkedIn and all of, the social media, I see all of these new companies that are just popping up. We can help with your HR, we can help with your business and finance. Um, and so it's intriguing to say, like, okay, how does this work? And when you see it happen, and the time that it saves on certain things, it's like, wow,
Hmm.
that's pretty incredible. And that's really scary at the same time. So I'm about embracing it in our district, but I don't have the personal knowledge or skills or capacity at this point to say that I'm an expert in AI because I am not. But I am trying to set us up, um, by connecting in these national collaboratives to get training and to see what is happening and how should we be thinking about it in a broader sense. And that's where we are right now. So
Yeah.
it's not where we want to be, but
Hmm.
I don't know that anybody is really where they need to be when it comes to AI. I think having that mindset and that focus of, okay, here it is. How do we work with it?
No, absolutely. First of all, I do not think that you like you or anyone right now need to be an AI expert. I think it's first thing that you have already said, which was important, is that you are interested to embrace it, and but the urgency around that is from two major points. One is if we get it right, all the other goals that the school has, whether it is improving test scores, improving student engagement, improving teachers' retention because we can help reduce their workload and give them more face time with students. Like all the other goals can be majorly and directly impacted because of it. Hence, it becomes the top priority, even if it was not. So I think that's one of the biggest factors that we are looking at from different school districts. And also the other aspect of is students are anyways using it. So the repercussions of unstructured or leaving them by themselves, leaving them to themselves, is the repercussion will come to the schools, even
Right.
if they ask for it or not. And there is no shying away, as you said. Parents will expect that schools are gonna provide remedy for everything. So
Yes.
I think that
Yeah.
in that way, AI does take a much more centerpiece. Um, Last thing I would love to know about the whole child ideology. I see how strongly you talk about equity, how strongly you talk about inclusion, embracing diversity. How are you putting that down from a vision to an actionable plan?
When I speak to my staff, my teachers, my team here at central office, it's always about what are we doing for all of our kids and how do we make that strong layer one instruction be a priority? Because if we get that right, then everything else we can handle. So again, it's creating that strong layer one instruction for all of our kids. Whenever we start talking, oh, this student's a special ed student, this student is an English learner, this student has behavior issues, I really interject at that point and say, these are our kids, not the special ed kid, not the behavior kid, not the English learner. These are just our kids, and they all want to feel successful. And so, when we look at whole child, I really, in when I speak to my staff, try to pull back to say it is this whole human that we are talking about, and they are very complex and they have different needs. And that creates a lot of strain and pressure on us because we then talk about differentiation, which is a whole other challenge. Every student has different needs. And so it comes back to language and how we speak about our kids. Um, Whole child, there's a lot of the vernacular around, just in education in general. We start to forget that there's, again, that sense of humanity behind everything. When you get angry, frustrated parents, I'm grateful because that means they care. And that, again, that challenge provides an opportunity for us to partner and to figure it out together for their child. Um, so yeah, when I reflect back when I didn't feel successful in that first semester of college,
Hmm.
I look back on, nobody pushed me to be in advanced placement courses, even though I was a good and compliant student. No, my parents didn't go to college. And so they always just encouraged me, like, you have to go to college, you have to go to college. But they didn't know how to navigate that atmosphere of you have to make sure you do your FAFSA and you have to take the ACT or the SAT and you have
Yeah.
to apply by this time. And there's a college essay and there's all of these pieces they didn't know. And so I've always taken my experiences to say, I don't, I'm going to put things in place so that students and families don't have to worry that when a student graduates, they've done all the things to
Mhm.
be able to make the choices that they want to make, whether it's college, going straight into the workforce, going into the military, or taking a year off to study abroad or do whatever they want to do, that
Yeah.
they are able to make those choices. I almost didn't go to college because I hadn't taken the ACT and I hadn't applied. And my senior English teacher, Jennifer Hoover, she took me to the counselor's office. And I remember her scolding the counselor in front of me. Why hasn't she taken her ACT? Why hasn't she applied for college? Like, she is a great student. And how many more of these students are out there that we have not helped?
Hmm.
And so there are just moments in my educational journey that have impacted me in different ways to where I wouldn't be sitting here right now if
Mhm.
it weren't for certain people.
I really think, that once this podcast is out and those two teachers you mentioned, the grade one and the high school teacher, how are they going to feel that even after so many years, you are taking their names? It's such a beautiful feeling. And God bless them that they invested in you so much and that now you're giving back. Um, Love that answer. Uh, there's just one last section that we do on our podcast. This is called the TomoClub Insight, in which we there's a question being passed on to you from the previous guest we have, and his name is Nicholas Bond. He's a head of school in a IB school in actually,
Okay.
and he had a question which is very related to we just discussed. His question was, everyone says sense of belongingness is important, right? So he wanted to
Sense
know,
of belongingness.
yes. So he wanted to know, what does belongingness mean to you?
When I think of belongingness, I think about connection.
Okay.
I'm always trying to find connections with those that I meet, with those who I am family with my friends. Um, it always comes down to that connection. And I feel like we are so interconnected as human beings. And if you're in education, you're even more connected because, it seems, especially here in New Mexico, if you know one person, they know someone you know. And it's just, we say, oh my gosh, what a small world. But that sense of belongingness comes through connection because, again, it all goes back to that sense of purpose and care. And when you're connected with someone, you do belong. You
Hmm.
belong in that space.
Lovely. I'll definitely pass on this answer to him. Any question that you want to have for the next guest we're going to have?
Wow. Question for the next guest. I guess I would ask them what, I've struggled with over my educational journey, and that is, how do you balance your personal and your professional life to where you feel good about both and that they're commensurate and that you're not providing more attention to one than the other?
Great question. And I'll definitely get back to you with that answer. But thank you so much.
Okay.
This has been quite a knowledgeable podcast. And I hope you also felt the same. But it was great having you.
Thank you again, Avinash, for allowing just me to have the time to reflect and connect with you as well. In this journey, we don't, like I said before, we don't really get to have that reflection time. And just until recently have I realized how important that really is. So thank you for allowing me the time to do that.
No, absolutely. You need to feel proud. You need to take a second to appreciate yourself and, pat your back. So this is that moment. And thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.